So this is part 3. Please check out the first couple of parts before you watch this, if you could. We left off with this article, "The Wealth Divide Never Wider," but they finished off in this paragraph saying, "Yet the divide in pay does not basically exemplify the exact loss, basically their standard of living." So, and that's because they've been able to provide a lot of cheap goods from through globalism and that. Basically, the Chinese are supplying the American much of the American goods that they receive. It's gotten better quality, but at the same time, all of this is kind of an illusion, just built off cheap crap. And until they go completely fully automated, where they don't really need people in the workforce as much anymore. Like I mentioned, the only reason these people are the average person is allowed a decent standard of living compared to Africa is because these people are taking so much globally, everywhere, all that labor, all that time and energy that's being put into those clothes and those shoes and everything, those electronics in Asia, it's not going back to the people because they're not participating in how they're being divvied up. So it just is going to a company, a shell company usually, but and it's all being sent to people who have money to pay for things, which would be Europe and America mostly. It'll be interesting to see what happens though when they go automated, because they won't need those robotic human workers, those sweatshops or low-wage workers anymore, and there probably won't be a lot of people to buy them anymore, which is a lot of Americans. So I guess you would see a scenario like that movie Elysium. Something that would be different though is you wouldn't see people peacefully at the end, getting health care and stuff by the robots. Yeah, even though I'm talking about all this stuff, direct democracy, people have been so used to not actually participating in direct democracy or anything that's close to it that I don't know if they would actually do that. I think it would be like Africa. I mean, you see like Americans or Europeans. It could be like, Africa, where they raid the food convoy trucks, raiding those health pods. Much like consumers raid electronics at Walmart or Circuit City. You see them every Black Friday. It's not so much that they can't be trusted with freedom, it's just that they've never had it before, so they don't know if they actually had a rush of it, they wouldn't even know how to handle it. But it doesn't mean that they don't deserve it. Freedom, it's a nice word to use, but as far as it being applied in reality, it's kind of ridiculous until you have it. To keep saying that you have freedom, that you have whatever liberty, as they say. I don't equate liberty with freedom. I think liberty, like I've mentioned before, is basically privileges from the business elite class who own the government. So that's what we're getting into in this third video, because obviously it's not the people's government, it's business interest government. So someone wrote this, or posed this question when they wrote this article: who's in control, nation states or global corporations? Well, just right off the bat, I think nation states, for the most part, at least in Europe and North America, they don't really exist. Nation, it means people, like, even with Native Americans or Indians, they had nations, genetic ties with each other. So, I mean, as far as genetic or race, it's not really a nation state. It's just an economic state. So is it being run by an economic state, or is an economic state running the government? Yeah, but technically it's what they say here, global corporations. So it's not even really local economic states or economic corporations. It's global corporations that run the U.S., that run the EU, Canada, a lot of, much of the world. Yeah, what you're seeing with Ukraine, it's a good example. is yes, they kind of look like a nation state. They appear to be, but they're an economic state. That's what they are. And globalists are trying to take over that economic state. Whereas in Russia, Russia, they had basically controlling interest of the stock of that economic state or company before. So the American dream, right? The American dream, a bunch of rich people wanted to make the poor better off, right? Pursuit of happiness. I think that they were just creating a system that would allow them to make as much money as they possibly could and not have it be based off genetics or bloodlines. Kind of like how feudalism was. For the first time ever, more than half the members of Congress are millionaires. They're living the high life at taxpayer expense. And technically, it's people who put them there, which are, I guess you could say, a person, a corporation. It's the corporations that put that politician into office. That's really who's, through lobbying and that, they send a lot of money to them. So it's also the corporations that put them there that are helping to pay for the high life, not just the taxpayer who subsidizes that. So this is kind of where I disagree with the economic dream, end of the American dream. Again, they're just assuming that this is what the American dream is all about. Now, this is taking place. What's taking place is what was supposed to happen. So for the first time that this has ever happened in the U.S. history, so most of the people that founded the country were very, very wealthy. And the first president, very, very wealthy. He formed monopolies with whiskey distilleries, the largest in America. So he was a big exporter, right? Increased production of flour and cornmeal to export high quality flour to the West Indies. So, because if you were to sell it at home, you wouldn't make much money because most of the people there were poor. So they can export it to other places and make a lot more money. I know this is like a sacrilege in right circles to talk bad about the forefathers. But I don't really consider myself to be in a circle anymore, at least. So I feel free now to talk about this. So if you disagree with me, then please subscribe. But if you're open to, looking at things differently, possibly, then keep watching, I guess. It's funny that they said George Washington's liquid gold, because when I just did a quick search and found this article about the Whiskey Rebellion, they said that all these frontier farmers, mostly people who fought in the Revolutionary War, who were promised land by these business elites, never actually got that land. In fact, they sold it back to those in Washington because they couldn't afford to actually travel out to these lands, these plots of land, to check them out, right? So they sold them pennies on the dollar back to the elites after fighting this war for them. But yeah, it says here that they were rebelling against a whiskey tax, that was pushed by Washington so he can have his own whiskey monopoly. In 1790, Washington was president, and the first Congress was meeting in Philly, the new nation's capital. In the western counties of Pennsylvania, however, many frontier settlers grew increasingly unhappy with the new federal government. Most people living in the Forks were poor farmers. Some were squatters who illegally farmed land illegally. See, there you go, property law and all that stuff. Illegally farmed land owned by Eastern speculators. So kind of going off what I said, they fought in the American Revolution. They were tough and often uneducated, which meant, I guess they didn't know that they were being scammed, but they valued their freedom, right? It says here that they actually used the whiskey as like a bartering tool or currency. It says it was used as money since currency and coins were in short supply. They bartered the whiskey for needed supplies and sold it for cash. Many depended on this income to avoid foreclosures on their homes. So, sound familiar? Like a reverse mortgage? So the scam goes way back. So if you watch the last 3 videos, this all kind of comes together. The American dream, it was so much better back then. Well, it was built off debt, right? The Revolutionary War debt. So for the elites to come in and do what they were doing, business elites, someone's going to have to pay the debt. So, raise taxes and have the people that help fight for them to pay off the debt through a whiskey tax. Same thing that they were using to be able to barter and keep their homes. So not very, to me, it just doesn't seem like very benevolent people. The nation, or the national and state governments, had borrowed tens of millions of dollars from foreigners and American citizens. So the country was born basically out of debt. The financial economy was born out of debt. That's why I just get a little confused when there's people that will praise the forefathers, but at the same time complained about debt and the government spending. So that's the same thing of kind of being naive to believe that you're going to have like a limited type government. They're not going to, you got to keep them in check, and all you got to do is just vote the right people in. It's not the system, it's just that the wrong people are in there. They're not benevolent people. Trust me, when I first got into this news type stuff, before that I was a Ron Paul supporter. I participated, I guess you could say, use that word, in the primary elections and stuff like that, canvassing and that. So, I went through all of this, But, yeah, InfoWars, helped wake me up. So not completely bash them, but if you can go beyond that and see that there's a lot more to this than just limited government and tyranny and let's revolt. It's about business, freedom of profit, like I said, with the Bundy Ranch. Made in 1776, made in the USA. So now they're going to have a new clothing line praising these wealthy elites. And what they started. Made in 1776. They actually also created this. I almost thought it was a joke at first, but you don't just profit from patriotism. You can also profit from what? Survival, right? So you're going to die if you don't take this stuff. Obviously, I'm just exaggerating here, but an InfoWars Life Super Male Vitality and Super Shield. So now they're coming out with these male and female vitality survival health drops. The reason I bring this up is because, thank you for supporting the info war. I don't know if he's purposely misleading people. That would be disinformation. Maybe he's just misinformed, or maybe these are just his views that he believes in, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, don't want to force anybody to change their mind. Just try to make a convincing argument. But if he is a disinfo agent, then that would be pretty crazy that you'd be supporting the propaganda war, right? The informational war to keep the system going. Just like the Revolutionary War, right? You just you have a bunch of the poor people that you're going to get enslaved in debt to fight that war, to get rid of the old guys. Or the bailout, right? You pay the people that helped steal a bunch of wealth from you. You compensate them for that. So yeah, these are the people that represent you. These are the people that are going to be setting policy. And they have liaisons known as congressmen or whatever, the top 50 highest paid CEOs, and you can go in there and check them out. Viacom, telecom companies, energy, healthcare, retail. So it just goes on and on and on. So, these are your elected officials or representatives right there. And these are the same people that will prevent things from like this happening. Funny-looking tower generates 600% more electrical energy than traditional wind turbines. So a lot of money goes into ensuring that this stuff never comes to fruition. They use laws and stuff so it doesn't, and possibly they'll kill you or make you disappear. Solar roadways. Ooh, a solar roadway, right? It can heat it up. You won't even need salt, possibly, but that won't happen, right? Can I convert my car to run on water? Well, technically you can, but until the men in black show up, You could have tires that you never have to replace, but they're $4,000. Money used to control people. The American dream. Thank you.